Tonight on The Struggle. Heavy spending in the budget, Australian citizens stuck in India, and incentives to get out and about in Melbourne. The highly anticipated federal budget was handed down last week, with Treasurer Josh Frydenberg outlining the damage caused by the pandemic.
Australia has been hit by an economic meteor.
And in an attempt to absorb the impact, the government is throwing billions and billions of dollars to kickstart things financially.
Australia's economic engine is roaring back to life.
Undoubtedly, that engine would be powered by fossil fuels. And while there's been a bit of debate about how much the budget will actually help women, young people and international students, there's no denying this is a budget squarely focused on beverages. For a start, small brewers and distillers are set to rejoice with $255 million worth of tax relief on its way. And for those on government payments like JobSeeker, the $50 a fortnight payment increase works out to be about an extra $3.50 a day. So it looks like Josh is shouting the morning coffee. Almost. Thanks. And with $90 million allocated to consent education, that means a whole lot more milkshakes. But while the impact of the cash splash might help Australia in the long term, there are still issues on a much shorter time frame to be addressed. So let's cross to our millennial correspondent, Emily, for more.
Hi, welcome back to I'm a Millennial, Get Me Out of Here. Now, I don't know about you, but after spending an entire year in quarantine, cooped up in a house with housemates, I've kind of warmed up to the idea of owning my own actual house. And I know what you're thinking. Emily, you're a millennial. Isn't there this whole running joke about you guys never being able to afford a house? But that's not entirely true. In fact, I've read several articles about success stories of people my age getting it, buying a house all on their own. So let's have a look at what they have to say for some quick tips. All right, how a 20-year-old bought 3 investment properties. Here's 7 steps to get started. 3, I'm just looking for 1 property. So this guy must know what he's doing if he already has 3 properties by the age of 20. Let's see what his tips are. Okay, step 1, family assistance. A helping hand can be a simple way to jumpstart a property portfolio from a young age. Not really sure what that means. Maybe he means going to family members for recommending houses, keeping an eye out for available property maybe. Let's read on. His mum gave him $60,000 to start investing with. That's a helping hand. What have I been getting? Helping fingertips? What? The housing market here is so messed up. People are already starting to buy houses for their preschoolers. Preschoolers. I'm competing against preschoolers and I'm losing. Look, there's nothing wrong with getting a little help from your parents. If you have rich parents, then go ahead, use them. But some of us don't actually have that luxury, nor do we have the ability to stay at home rent-free. If you're going to be giving out tips on how to save for a house, realize that the way you got about it isn't going to be the same way as everyone else, nor is everyone else going to be able to take on those same tips that you did. The housing market here is so messed up, but at least I can look forward to the fact that I can afford some property. I found this just on the side of the road, and it's free real estate. Back to you, Sam.
All the best with it, Emily. Over to state matters now, and broadcaster of Hot Air Steve Price has directed a strange line of inquiry towards Dan Andrews, requesting an apology for the Premier's disappearing act from public life. Now, putting aside the small fact that Andrews is more than slightly injured and is recovering at home, it's not as though the Premier has completely ghosted Victoria. He's provided updates, thanked all the well-wishers, and even took the time to give us an exclusive interview on the show just a few weeks back. Look, Steve, we know you might be missing the comfort of seeing that familiar face who day in, day out fronted those press conferences during lockdown. But if you're missing him that much, you can watch the repeats on YouTube if you've got nothing better to do with your time. Which clearly you don't. Speaking of Conservative commentators, and unsurprisingly, Andrew Bolt has been turning heads again recently, but not for the usual reasons.
The politicians may not be doing this for racist motives, but they're allowed to get away with it because, I think, in part, racism, as well as fear and ignorance and all those other things that you've mentioned. I just think it's so shameful.
Andrew Bolt speaking out against racism? Are you serious? What's been going on? Has he been drinking on live TV or something?
Whiskey with a mate. I love this segment.
Yikes. But I'm intrigued. Who's the special mate that gets to share the whiskey with Mr. Bolt?
Small problem I knew there would be with this segment, calling it whiskey with a mate. That's a bit tough for a guy that doesn't actually have many mates. I'm a bit of a hermit.
Oh, poor Andrew. But when he does finally manage to get a mate on, it's good to know they're always ripping company.
Pauline Hanson, what have you got in your hand?
Well, look what I've got here.
Well, we almost got through an entire season without bringing up Pauline Hanson, but it just wouldn't be the struggle without her. Anyway, let's head over to Soraya for a dash of sport.
The recent COVID crisis in India has dominated much of the pandemic-related news in recent weeks. Prime Minister Scott Morrison controversially implemented a ban on all travel from India to Australia, leaving thousands of Australians stranded overseas. Now, in the midst of this emergency situation, many of us have heard the tragic stories of hardship and loss faced by those in India, such as children being separated from their parents for extended periods of time, or the deep sense of betrayal felt by those being locked out of their own country by their own government. But in the midst of all this tragedy, it's important not to lose sight of those who have suffered more than anyone else in India, Australia's cricketers. Yes, in India at the time, due to their participation in the Indian Premier League, or IPL, the likes of Steve Smith and Pat Cummins were trapped in the subcontinent, along with thousands of other Australians. Now, I think we can all agree that Australia's cricketers are the true victims of the COVID crisis in India. I mean, after all, the amount of pain and suffering that they would have endured from being trapped in the hotel room for an extended period of time, away from friends and family, would undoubtedly be their second worst Indian experience of 2021. Now, whilst it's true that some of these cricketers have earned literally millions of dollars from their participation in the IPL over recent years, the Australian media has rightly decided that this small group of individuals' challenges warrants comparable media coverage to the thousands of non-millionaire Australians also stuck in India, the vast majority of whom just happen to not be white. Fortunately, arrangements have been made to transfer these real Australian cricketers back home via the Maldives. Okay, but to be fair, it's not actually the cricketers' fault that they've received the amount of coverage and support that they have. In fact, the likes of Pat Cummins and even Cricket Australia have made notable contributions towards supporting India and its people during these challenging times. But from the Australian media's perspective, why choose to focus on regular Indian Australians when we can instead focus on the most affluent white Australians in the exact same position? Now, Australia's tendency towards sporting exceptionalism and increasingly favourable treatment of the rich and powerful aside, how unfair would it be if near exclusive coverage of the Indian COVID crisis were talking about the racist and classist nature of the Indian travel ban? Because after all, I'm sure we can all remember when jail time and extreme fines were threatened to Australians returning from the UK and US during their peak COVID crises. Right? No. There you go.
Thanks, Soraya. We're off to a drinks break. Welcome back. NAPLAN has been in the educational crossfires of late, with a push from some to have the school test scrapped. Having been cancelled in 2020 for some unknown reason, recent chatter suggests teachers' unions aren't the biggest fans of NAPLAN, as the data can be used to compare relative performances of schools. And while NAPLAN doesn't look like going anywhere in the foreseeable future, if it did disappear, then there would be some serious questions. Like, how would schools know which areas they need to focus on most? And how would parents know how their children are measuring up against the national standards? And perhaps most pressingly, with NAPLAN going fully online next year, what's going to happen to the hundreds and thousands of pencils teachers hand out for the tests? So for more on the matter, let's head over to the ever-sharp Karen Kvetch.
Thanks, Sam. It's that time of year again. The National Assessment Program for Literacy and Numeracy, more commonly referred to as NAPLAN, is currently being undertaken by all students in years 3, 5, 7 and 9. But the fact of the matter is, not all these students are completing the testing, because some precious parents believe that their children should be immune from the tests. These overbearing and delusional parents are not sending their children to school, but rather keeping them home to shield them from NAPLAN and probably from the outside world as well. Now, I'm sure you're wondering,
What reason would parents have to stop their children from completing NAPLAN altogether? Well, some parents believe that NAPLAN is just too stressful for their children. In case you parents weren't aware, assessment is what the school system is based around, and shielding your children from this at a young age will not help them in their senior years whatsoever. To be perfectly honest, this situation has made me absolutely livid. Children need to learn how to handle assessments at a young age, as this is what their senior years of schooling and university or TAFE education will revolve around. Assisting students to deal with and cope with the stress associated with assessments is what will equip them with the skills they need to lead a successful life. Forcing them to live under a rock, unaware of what reality is, will not assist them in their futures whatsoever. This behaviour is unacceptable and I will not tolerate it. Back to you, Sam.
Feel free to keep on walking, Karen. Moving on then, and mass vaccination hubs have slowly popped up across the country, with even Bunnings Warehouse pledging their stores as support for the rollout of vaccines against COVID-19. 2020's unofficial Sexiest Man Alive and Victorian Chief Health Officer Professor Brett Sutton bared his tattooed bicep for the cameras as he got vaccinated, saying the following day he was nursing the expected side effects with nothing out of the ordinary. Not everyone is eligible for the vaccine in early rounds, with vulnerable groups and essential workers given greater preference. Apart from vaccination hubs, individuals have also been encouraged to get vaccinated at their GP clinic to share the burden of the rollout, already behind schedule when compared to initial government projections. With long queues possible at mass vaccination hubs, the same could be said for hospitality in Melbourne, with the state government and City of Melbourne pledging more than $260 million to reinvigorate dining, arts and culture. With more on the plans, we have our celebrity chef, Kirsten Gent.
After last year, if scores of Melburnians aren't already back at their pubs ordering palmies by the dozen, just wait until these hospitality vouchers that cover up to $100 per person with no household limits come out.
Some of Melbourne's best-known chefs have united to make a desperate pitch to the Premier to save their industry. One idea, the government gives every household $100 to spend at their local pub or restaurant.
Yes, friendly folk interstate, you too can claim these vouchers if you're quick enough. Just imagine a group of friends, all with vouchers, hitting the city every night of the week and getting more chow for their change. It shouts all round thanks to the City of Melbourne. The city has pledged hundreds of millions of dollars to revitalise Melbourne's interconnected arts, culture and hospitality scene, which in many areas seems to be returning back to the melting pot it's reputed for. This means that you can dine at your favourite restaurants and receive 20% rebate on the ripper of a meal you've copped. What a steal! So, when they're rolled out, get your voucher. Get your voucher and support the future of your foodie herd and their vibrant culinary ecosystem. Not getting your voucher is selfish. Get your voucher and get all your friends to get their vouchers too. Paying full price at the end of a meal is your right, but think about the rest of us. Now, it may seem like that I'm the absolute proponent of home cooking, but don't get me wrong, as you may just sit down to one of my secret menu items peppered across the big and small culinary establishments around the city, which I've prepared from home. Bon appetit, Sam.
Savvy advice, Kirsten. We're off to another break. Welcome back again. There's no denying that we love cryptocurrencies on this show. While Bitcoin has been representative of the online currency system for a while now, there may be a new contender in the form of Dogecoin. The founders, Billy Marcus and Jackson Palmer, launched the cryptocurrency in 2013 as a way to make fun of the other cryptocurrencies that claim to take over the world. However, it's actually been performing quite well. Branded after the iconic Doge meme, the cryptocurrency recently hit an all-time high following a 6-month climb of 26,000%. Dogecoin now has a value of $92 billion. TikTok teens and meme addicts alike are buying Dogecoin and totally outsmarting corporate Wall Street businessmen. Although Elon Musk's appearance on Saturday Night Live may have slightly jeopardized this, as by the end of the show the currency dropped to 19.5%. Speaking of rich, Bill and Melinda Gates are getting divorced after 27 years of marriage. 27. I guess they really tried to make it work. Honestly, people now get divorced almost as soon as they get married, so 27 years is pretty impressive. However, with 3 children and one of the world's biggest foundations, I'm sure you have some questions. As for the kids, hopefully being heirs to parents with a combined worth of $124 billion, they can afford the best therapist. Although reportedly, the kids will only get $10 million each, with Bill and Melinda planning on giving most of their wealth away. As for the other baby, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, well, there's no need to worry, the foundation is not going anywhere. The two are still working together to fight poverty, disease, and inequity around the world. So don't worry, not all bad is coming from this divorce. The Gates family has asked for privacy, and we should probably respect that. After all, they did create Microsoft for us. Oh, and they're also saving humans around the world from dying. Anyway, let's change things up a bit and check in with our fangirl to see what's trending in the world of pop culture.
Oh, hey Sam! I have the most exciting news ever. I feel like it's my birthday. As a longtime fan of RuPaul's Drag Race, I could not be more thrilled for RuPaul Drag Race Down Under. If you don't have Stan, you better download it ASAP because the drag race has already begun. With queens coming from Australia and New Zealand, this is like a real-life version of Priscilla. However, being a part of the competition is a bit pricey. I guess beauty does have a price to pay. Shantae, you gotta pay. The boots, the outstanding outfits, the wigs, the makeup, the accessories, the prosthetics, the props, and I haven't even mentioned glitter! Queens enter the competition with kits ranging from $4,000 to $20,000, so it is fair to say they must come prepared. However, the winner of RuPaul Drag Race Down Under will be receiving a $30,000 cash prize and a year's supply of Revolution Beauty Cosmetics. Oh, I feel like RuPaul saying that. While the $30,000 may just cover some of the Queen's kits, the show does come with a whole lot of recognition, and with recognition comes opportunity. Many of the queens from the American version have gone on to further their careers and have millions of fans on Instagram. From live shows, YouTube channels, makeup deals, there is nothing these icons cannot do. I don't know about you, but I cannot wait to see Australia's next queen, and I am so ready for some catfights and death drops. Back to you, Sam.
Thanks, Sophia. Former reality star turned Goya Beans spokesman Donald Trump has been in the news recently following a decision by the Facebook Oversight Board to uphold his ban from the platform indefinitely. This decision comes after Trump was removed from various social media sites after egging on his supporters to storm the Capitol building on January the 6th. Though certainly the ban is a win for democracy, this move is crushing news for comedy writers around the world who haven't had to do any work for the past 5 years, instead just copy and pasting his tweets into the script before knocking off at 11 AM after a hard morning's work. I mean, let's be real, Trump's given us some beauties over the years. Who could forget when he honoured 9/11 on Twitter and even included all the haters and losers? Or when he celebrated the true heartland of Mexican cuisine on Cinco de Mayo, Trump Tower. Although clearly his best work was this absolute gem. I guess we'll never understand the true meaning of covfefe. But ever the fighter, after months of threatening to, it appears Trump has launched a social media site of his own. Kind of. We first covered this story about a month ago, and here with an update on it is our influencer, Natasha.
Thanks, Sam. Now, about a month ago, I talked about how Donald Trump was planning on launching his own social media website, discussed what it might look like, and gave out some really handy tips on how to become a successful influencer on this platform. And today I am happy to report that just as Trump fulfilled his promise to build an impenetrable wall, he's also kept his promise to start a social media website. Kind of. On his website, Trump has added a section called From the Desk of President Donald J. Trump, where he posts daily updates on his thoughts on current events, what's on his mind, etc., etc. But his followers aren't able to directly engage with what he is posting. So basically, he started a blog. Yep, that's right. The man who until recently was the most powerful man in the world is now a part-time blogger. This man had the nuclear codes, but is now engaging with the world in the same way that Gossip Girl did. And how is this blog going? Well, let's have a look at some of his recent posts. Here he is calling the winner of the Kentucky Derby a junkie. Not the jockey, the horse itself. Okay, cyberbullying horses isn't a great start. Here he is spouting off more election conspiracy theories. Same old stuff, really. Oh, and here he is criticizing a congresswoman. A little mean, but still pretty normal stuff for a politician. Oh wait, it's Liz Cheney from his own party. He's literally attacking people from his own party now. Okay, but here he is praising a politician. Oh wait, it's Kim Jong-un. Come on, man. So Trump is spouting crazy garbage again? Seems like things are going back to normal. I know as an influencer, I should love this social media content, but my honest advice, stay away from it. Let Trump just shout his nonsense into an empty vacuum chamber, because as funny as it might be, all it's doing is amplifying hatred and lies. As for me, hopefully this is the last time that I have to cover Trump's social media. But who knows, maybe Trump will discover the struggle and call us fake news on his blog. A girl can dream. Anyway, back to you, Sam.
Thanks, Natasha. Well, that brings us to the end of not only this episode, but also Season 7. We're headed back to Community Television's Antenna Awards in just under 2 weeks' time, with 7 nominations in tow. But after the last ceremony, where we claimed a grand total of 0 awards from 6 nominations, we've got pretty low expectations. For me, it's been a short but sweet ride as I now vacate this chair and leave it in the capable hands of whoever claims it first, hot desking style. And as always, the struggle, it's real.